don't like what the Tories stand for. I've spent my entire political career arguing against, standing against everything the Tories stand for.
But she committed the cardinal sin of saying it. You're not allowed to say, you can think it, you can say it. It's like, oh, well, if you detest the Tories, then surely that means that you detest every person who voted. Will you apologise? Let's create a controversy about you being nasty to your political opponents. These people are bottom feeders, these media hacks. They're just the worst people. I would not want to shake their hands in case, I will not allow myself to have my point of view and my voice cucked by people who appeal to nonsense things like civility politics. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, she's the First Minister of Scotland, and I'm a big fan, actually. I think she's pretty good. I dislike how much she focuses on Brexit independence rather than focusing on the kind of social democratic platform that she's at least trying to build and what she's used, and through the devolutionary powers that's been given to her over the course of the last how many years or so, she's used that power to turn Scotland into the kind of the last bastion of kind of third way dynamics, political dynamics in the UK. And people in Scotland are seeing the benefits, and that's why the SNP continue to command a huge majority in Holyrood, continue to command a huge majority when it comes to Scottish seats in Westminster, because she's made life better for people in Scotland, right? Whilst people in the rest of the UK, they've seen their living standards collapse, Scotland's at least been able to bear the brunt of that because of her more progressive platform that she stands on. And they're probably the most progressive mainstream party now in the Commons, because Keir Starmer's taken the Labour Party back. She was pretty much to the right of Corbyn, but to the left of everybody else. Miliband, Starmer, anyone else who could theoretically have led the Labour Party at any of that point, right? What I mean by third way 255 is the kind of social market neoliberal kind of ideology, right? Where you look at, for example, something like what Tony Blair ostensibly stood for but didn't really actually properly implement, is this idea that you don't have to have the state owning or demarketising any parts of the economy as per social democratic principles. But what you can do is have a heavy tax burden upon the rich to be able to fund public services from in that manner. So you have a very redistributive economic platform, but you don't have much where there's an interventionist level from the government owning large parts of the economy for the benefit of everybody, which is a social democratic principle. It's this kind of halfway house between full-throated neoliberalism and the social democratic principles that previously were the kind of foundation of the Labour Party, but before Blair took charge and just said, no more public ownership, no more state control of assets. We don't need it anymore. We can just have high taxes, and then that will pay for public schools, it will pay for the NHS, and it will pay for Sure Start, and it will pay for all of the stuff that the British public expect from the state to be able to provide for them. But that didn't work because he had to rely on PFIs to fund all this shit. And it's not working under the Tories because they're trying to cut taxes and they also don't believe in public services at all. So they're deliberately trying to defund them to justify selling them off and marketising them. That's what I mean by third way as opposed to social democratic. Like, I do believe in general that Nicola Sturgeon does have social democratic principles in her heart, but she doesn't have enough power, even with devolution, while she's the First Minister of Scotland, to actually implement that policy platform. So the furthest it can go is like the left of the third way, like the social market economy, right? Which is fine. It's better than what we have as the like libertarian Rothbardian dystopia that Liz and Kwame want to be able to build in the UK. So that's the kind of difference I would say between where the Labour Party are and where Nicola Sturgeon is, and that Labour Party are incredibly neoliberal, or they were up until Jeremy Corbyn. I think Keir Starmer's moved slightly away from that. He's willing with a small amount of intervention into the economy, but it's mostly just subsidy that he's doing. He's not really properly turning away towards social democracy, but he has that power because he would be empowering Westminster. Like if Nicola Sturgeon became Prime Minister because the SNP started running seats in England, never happened, but let's just theoretically imagine that did happen, I think she would go further on renationalisation than Keir Starmer ever would, right? Because she's a proper social democrat and Keir Starmer is just a liberal. Now, because of this, obviously, there's been an interview that was had where she was asked about her preference with regards to who is in power in Westminster and her relationship with Westminster. And this caused a bit of a stir online, so let's watch it.
Is Liz Truss a friend or a foe?
We're political opponents, but I've always tried to work with her predecessors and I will try to work with her. So I would like to be a friend on the basis of the areas where we can work together constructively.
And what about Keir Starmer, friend or foe?
I work very well with Keir Starmer over Brexit. I'm really disappointed that Keir Starmer has thrown in the towel on the European Union and no longer wants to take the UK or Scotland back into the European Union.
Who would you rather have as Prime Minister?
Well, that's not a difficult question. I mean, if the question to me is, would I prefer a Labour government over a Tory government? I detest the Tories and everything they stand for, so it's not.
And that's the point where people have got stuck on, right? We'll come back to it, once we finish the rest of this video. There's only 20 seconds or so left to go. But this is where people have come unstuck, because she's explicitly said that she doesn't like her political opponents.
Difficult to answer that question.
So
yes,
you want to see Keir Starmer in
what
number
I'd say,
10?
two things. Firstly, being better than the Tories is not a high bar to cross right now. I think we need to see more of a radical alternative from Labour rather than just a pale imitation. And if you're asking me, do I think either a Westminster Tory government or a Westminster Labour government is good enough for Scotland, then my answer to that question is no.
First Minister Nicola Sturgeon.
And she's just 100% correct there. She's absolutely 100% correct with everything that she is saying within every position that she's holding here, right? In that, she's correct in saying that the Tories are horrendous. They're bad for every working person in this country, right? They're horrendous for everyone who actually works a proper job in this country. She's correct in saying that Keir Starmer is preferable. Doesn't matter whether you're Scottish, whether you're British, right? It's preferable for normal people in this country for Keir Starmer to be Prime Minister over Liz Truss. That is also a fact. And it's also a fact that there is no proper alternative and he is just a pale imitation of the Tories. It's just different shades of shit at this point. And the SNP are, again, when you look at Scotland, right, they position themselves as the real alternative to, kind of the continuity neoliberalism that's espoused by Starmer and the full-throated libertarian neoliberalism that you get espoused by Liz Truss and the Conservative Party and Ruth Davidson. And that's a correct position to have. But she committed the cardinal sin here. She committed the cardinal sin of saying that she detests the Tories, which is odd, right? You'd think that. Again, this liberal civility politics where you can acknowledge that the policies of your political opponents immiserate millions of people, right? Make life materially worse for everybody at the expense of, a moneyed elite that they essentially only do policy for overall, right? Massively increasing inequality, massively making the country worse for everybody, and you can see the negative utility of those positions being outlined and how much worse it's making lives for, and people literally dying, right? You look at the austerity policies of the Cameron Osborne administration. As I mentioned previously, the new studies we've shown has led to up to estimations of around 330,000 people whose lives were lost because of the implementation of austerity politics. And you can see your political opponents, and you literally, when you look at the stats materially, they're mass murderers, right? They killed huge swathes of people have been sent to early graves because of the draconian Conservative policy. And you say, yeah, I detest these people. Of course you do. Well, why would they not detest them? In the political sphere, these people are polar opposites, and as far as I'm concerned, at the very least, like when you look at it from a utilitarian basis, one of these people is responsible for huge amounts of lost life, and the other one isn't. Like, why would you not detest these people, especially when you're in a political sphere where you're diametrically opposed, not just on an ideological axis, but also on some kind of moral axis as well, right? Of course you detest them, but you commit the cardinal sin of saying it. You're not allowed to say. You can think it. You can say it. It's like, oh well, if you detest the Tories, then surely that means that you detest every person who voted Tory. Are you trying to? You're trying to lead in for the whole country for everybody, and you're dismissing 25% of the electorate. I'm like, yeah, sorry, mate. You're the minority. You're the minority here because you voted for in Scotland at least. They voted for the bad people. Like they literally voted. Especially when you look at 2010 to 2016 or whatever it is, they literally voted for mass death for the poor and the disabled. They voted for that. That's unconscionable. Now, obviously, right, her response to it was this, right? Let's have a look at her actual response that she gave.
First Minister, you're live on Sky News. Will you apologise for those comments today?
I was talking about policies and values of the Conservative Party that right now, and for much of my life, have done real damage to people in the kind of communities I grew up in, and people right now. This is a Conservative Party that was proposing to give tax cuts to the richest.
Doesn't sound like an apology, though, First Minister.
Look, we don't.
Well, she shouldn't apologise because she's right. She's 100% right. Like, these people are like absolutely just detestable human beings. And I don't know how you can ever possibly argue against that. But I digress. Hey, thank you for the follow, Jack Fury 10. Welcome to the No Justice stream. I hope you are doing well. But yeah, and she said she was talking about policies, right? Let's continue.
An SNP conference right now, and if the biggest controversy is that I don't like Conservative policies...
You said you
values,
detested the
then
Tories, everything they stand for.
I don't like what the Tories stand for. I've spent my entire political career arguing against, standing against everything the Tories stand for. There are people right across this country of Scotland, right across the UK right now, that because of Tory policies are unable to heat their homes and feed their children. So I will not apologise for saying...
Yeah, literally, social disaster has been inflicted upon the country by a sociopathic government, and they're like, but why are you not being nice to the sociopaths, Nicola? And she's like, yeah, no, fuck it, I won't apologise. It's so based. She's so good, and these media people are just dogs eating poop. Yeah, they're clawing us, like, oh, will you apologise? Let's create a controversy about you being nasty to your political opponents. These people are bottom feeders, these media hacks. They're just the worst people. I would not want to shake their hands in case I caught it.
That I stand against those kind of policies. I think many people, certainly most people in Scotland, and I suspect growing numbers of people across the UK, would take a very similar view.
Is it a gaffe? Because it has attracted all this attention. Look, you're surrounded by cameras. You're live on TV.
Yeah, well, it's great.
I mean, any publicity is good publicity, right? You're giving her publicity now. She can say, yeah, Tories are miserable. They're awful. They're responsible for mass death. What else do you want me to say? Like, come on. Like, we would rightly despise people who did that directly through the use of the state, directly through like the military or whatever. We happily hold these people to account. When it's done slowly over time, when the frog is being boiled in the bathwater, suddenly people don't notice, and you're not allowed to criticise it. No, tell it like it is. They did these policies. Because of those policies, people died. It's manslaughter at the very least, right?
That I'm live on TV, but I'm at an SNP conference right now. If you told me last week that the big controversy out of the SNP conference would be that I had said that I didn't much like Conservative Party policies, then I might have thought the rest of the conference must be going really well if that is the story out of the conference. I spent a political lifetime arguing against the Tories. I grew up in the west of Scotland in the 1980s. There are people that I grew up with that are still living with the damage the Tories did then, and they're doing it all over again. So in answer to your question, will I apologise for saying that I don't support and don't much like the policies of the Conservative Party? No, I won't. I've got a duty as First Minister to stand up against those policies.
Nicola Sturgeon.
Oh, she's so based. She's so good. Oh, why isn't every politician like this? God, you can just tell why she's so popular in Scotland. She's the only one who has the fucking guts to come out and just tell the truth. Just make the point. Just you forthright. No spin, no rehearsed lines, no repeating about magic money trees or growing pies or Tories coming down from the moon. No spin, just the Tories are bad, I stand against them, they've made this country worse, I will continue to stand against them for the rest of my life, and I have done for all of my life up to this point. Simple, honest politics directly. People want this stuff. People like this stuff. They don't want Keir Starmer being a fucking like a charisma vacuum, just rehearsing the lines that he's got from Alice Campbell and Peter Mandelson. They don't want that shit. They want people they can identify with, people they want to go to the pub with, people who tell it like it is, right? They just want, unfortunately, the media don't want people to tell it like it is. The media want people to tell them all these people that you've helped install into government aren't as bad as I tried to make out previously. No, they are. The media are complicit, and they've done huge amounts of both economic, political, and social damage to this country.
Thank you for joining us live on Sky News.
And she was explicit there in saying, the issue isn't whether or not she says the nasty thing or not. And to be fair, she made a clarification as well, in that the issue isn't, do I dislike the people who voted Conservative at the last election, right? And I made a joke on Twitter saying, well, no, actually, I'm attacking all of the Conservative Party members. I'm attacking all the Conservative Party voters, yeah. You caused this, mate. But I shouldn't do that. You really shouldn't do that. What you should look at this and say, well, hang on a minute. Why did they support in the first place? What's the media to blame? These people just have their consent manufactured at the end of the day, right? They're not really to blame for, things that happen because of different narratives that are being spun by the media, etc., etc. Even if they vote against their own interests, can you really blame them when the actual real political power lies with the media establishment, it lies with the political establishment, and it lies with the bourgeois establishment, right? That's where the real blame lies. People who vote Tory because they don't quite understand what exactly happens, right? I don't really blame them. I really don't blame them. And as many times I joke about hating Tories, I don't really hate them. I do hate the members, though. I do hate the MPs, though. And I do hate the leadership, and I do hate their donors. I hate all of these people that enable this stuff to happen. And Nicola Sturgeon was right by saying something like, I massively disagree with the Tories on policy, and I detest what they stand for. I detest the policy that they do. I would go a little further and I would attack the individuals involved in the party, but she made it clear that she wasn't doing so. But whatever, like, whether you blame the individuals or not, that doesn't change the negative utility of what was engaged in by the government, right? By the Tory government, both in the 80s, in the 2010s, and right now. It's all the same shit. All the same stuff. It's all the same level of terrible policy, both politically, economically, and socially. And you should call it out. And the media enable it, the politicians enable it, and their donors enable it. And these people should all be shown in the clearest of words what they've done and why they're bad. And again, the media just do not want to accept that they've been complicit in this, and so they attack her for it. Personally, I physically attacked every single Tory ever existed in my lifetime. True. I mean, like, just, again, it's just frustrating this liberal civility politics. Exactly what Tim Farron said. It's like when Tim Farron said, well, can we at least be civil when we're having this discussion? No, fuck off, Tim. Fuck off. I don't care. If Tories are engaging in huge amounts of mass death because of their policies, I'll fucking tell them. I'll tell them I hate it. If you can't hate something like mass irrismation and mass and like huge amounts of like intentional, or at least intentional policies that cause huge amounts of lost life, then what else can you bloody say? I will not allow myself to have my point of view and my voice cut by people who appeal to nonsense things like civility politics. If these things happen, I'll fucking call it out, and I'll call them the subhuman bastards that they actually are. Then fucking, I don't care. Just do not bloody care. And the worst possible thing, as far as liberals are concerned, is disrupting the social order, right? You remember at the Conservative conference from last week where people were protesting out in Birmingham, people saying, I can't believe people are shouting at politicians. Why would we have a world where people are nice to politicians anymore? We'll be nice to them when they stop fucking us up, when they stop ruining our lives. Very, very simple. Stop being shit. Stop making our lives worse, and we'll be nice to it. It's super fucking simple. We didn't vote for any of this. Jeremy Corbyn asked for a kinder, gentler politics, and the press called him a paedophile terrorist. Well, that is true, right? But then again, people misunderstand what Jeremy Corbyn asked for kinder, gentler politics. Well, like, he wanted the government to stop demociding the poor and create a country that is more equitable and works for everybody, right? That's what he meant with kinder, gentle politics. But the Liberals then took that to mean that we can't say nasty things about the politicians that do bad things. And I'm like, that's not really what he was saying when he said that, right? But politics itself, the act of policy making, that does need to be kinder and gentler and less cutthroat. The world needs to be less cutthroat when it comes to matters of competition, matters of economic and social competition, right? It should be more communitarian. Like, the right, they believe that we can't believe communities broken down. Yeah, mate, you support an economic system that rewards people for being competitive, for destroying the communities that we live in, right? If you don't want destroyed communities, stop supporting individualist political platforms like neoliberalism, both social and economic neoliberalism. It's very simple to stop doing that, and maybe we'll have a more cohesive society. But at the moment, we can't have that because it's within everyone's rational self-interest to continue being self-interested and to not care about what the wealth of your community. We need more things like cooperative funds. We need more local cooperatives. Lisa Nandy actually has a good policy, right? Not a massive Nandy fan, but she has a good policy called community right to own, where things like if pubs, for example, have to close down because they're hitting economic hard times, she says, well, brilliant, communities should be able to buy them up to be able to own them collectively, to bring them back towards the community, to keep these things that are the things like pubs. Like, it seems like a real frivolous thing, right? But these are centerpieces of our communities, and once these go away, what we left with just watching things on the internet forever, just spending time in chat rooms on Zoom. No, you need to socialise in your pub. They're centres of your community. We need to engage with that, and that policy that Lisa Nandy put together is good. And if we have these more kind of communitarian policies put forward, people will be more likely to be nicer to each other, because it's the social overall ramifications of how the economic model that we all inhabit shapes our perception of our society, right? I understand people are going to attack me for being a nasty old Marxist talking about base and superstructure, but it's obvious. It's obvious to anybody who's looking at this stuff and how the neoliberal consensus has shaped the way we view society. Like, there is no society, there are only individual men and women and there are families. It creates a society in which we don't build communities and we compete with each other for everything, whether it's social status, whether it's for money, whether it's for fame, whether it's for clout. It's all a competition, right? And the left appeal to you of this too. Like, I'm going to sound like super, I'm going to sound really bitter when I say this, but look at, for example, something like the left-wing media landscape. How many times do you see left-wingers trying to signal boost other creators, for example? Never. You never see it. The right do this all the time. They understand they have to build a media hegemony to be able to disseminate their actually unpopular political platforms. When things like nationalisation are actually pretty popular, they have to disseminate that, and so they have to have media hegemony. So they'll just create new stars out of everywhere. Fucking, what's Jess Gill and Reem Ibrahim doing on fucking Talk TV? These people are charisma vacuums. They're not media trained, but not yet anyway. But they have to get in with the children and get down with the kids. So they actually recruit these people, have a further more control over a hegemonic media landscape, and the left don't do this. The left don't do this. Like, when was the last time you saw Aaron Bastani or Ash Sarkar tweet out at smaller creators and go follow this person? This person's got interesting things that they should have to say. I'm not saying they need to retweet me or need to retweet one of my mates, but there needs to be. But this viewing things as a competition. Their dating sphere is a competition. The way that we date now is we create this profile and then you swipe left and right, and then you have to stand out from the crowd and beat everybody else to get to the punch, rather than just having a natural social interaction where you come together. This is toxic. This is not a good way to build a society, and it's all the fault of neoliberalism. Thing is, Nicola Sturgeon is already being extremely polite, grew up in a similar area to her, and the actual response is not to test, and Tory voters are absolutely not excluded. I mean, again, I think that these people, I said already, I think these people are subhuman sociopaths. Like, I would go that far when you look at Tory politicians at the very least, right? Like, I have a huge amount of animosity towards people who vote Tory, but not because of who they are as people, right? I recognise that these people have had their consent manufactured and they don't really understand a lot of the things that they're voting for. At least a lot of the poorer people don't. I hate to be these people are low information voters stuff about this, but they're trained already by the media landscape to be removed from understanding the issues. As we talk, when we watched that interview between Aaron Bastani and Gary Stevenson, we understood that people are, like, even the experts that people get on don't properly explain these things to people, because we expect experts to be able to do it for us. We expect representative democracy to do this for us, so much we don't engage with the actual meat and potatoes of the issues that we understand we need to know about, because it is in the interest of the bourgeois to make sure that we don't know about it. They don't want free-thinking individuals who understand society and understand the mechanisms that go on, because that stops us from being obedient workers, right? If they taught us proper critical thinking, we'd start challenging the systems that they've created, and so people will become victims of that. And the easiest way of doing that is by making sure that people who speak out about it in language that's not palatable to the establishment media, they get pilloried for it. And instead of us having a conversation about what good things the SNP have done for Scotland, we have to have conversations about, well, you said the bad word about the bad people. Oh, aren't you? Oh, civility politics, blah, blah, blah. Like, it just shows how much the media landscape shapes what we believe in this country. And also, if you're enjoying this content, please like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. You can become a member on YouTube for 99p or a subscriber on Twitch for $3.99. Because I'm a capitalist and I need to get my individual money to be able to take it from you, because it's a competition now. Give me the money. I jest, but you can also click the bell on YouTube. It'll notify you when I go live if you want to watch more content. And yeah, that's the end of that segment.